East African history. Mazrui conflicts of 1698 and 1840. Mazrui conflicts of 1698 and 1840. The Busedi were a ruling family in Oman. The Mazrui were the coastal Arab rulers of Mombasa's town. This struggle or conflict started in 1698 after the Portuguese had been defeated at the East African coast, the Oman Arabs. Reasons why the Busedi conflicted with the Mazrui between 1698 and 1840. The conflicts were sparked off by the failure of the Mazrui governors of Mombasa to recognize the rule of the Busedi family, who had taken over the control of the Oman Empire in 1741. After overthrowing the Yoruba dynasty, the Oman Arabs under the Busedi family wanted to control the lucrative Indian Ocean trade. Yet the Mazrui also wanted to control the same trade, which resulted into conflicts. The coastal governors of Mazrui were tired of foreign rule and hence wanted to be independent after chasing away the Portuguese. Therefore, they did not wish to be under a new colonial master. The Mazrui governors of Mombasa had declared themselves independent of Oman rule, and this had to be challenged by the Busedi rulers, who looked at it as a form of rebellion. The coastal governors hated the corruption and ruthless harshness of the Oman rulers, or governors known as the Walis, that had been appointed to administer the coast. The coastal people also hated the high taxes imposed on them by the Oman rulers. The Mazrui governors or rulers, they believed that they were the rightful rulers of Mombasa, and that even the Portuguese found them as rulers of the coast. The Busedi, on the other hand, maintained that they had the right to govern the coast as a compensation for liberating it from the Portuguese oppressive rule. The Busedi wanted to use the favourable coastal climate for agriculture, and this could only be done after the defeat of the Mazrui rulers. Mazrui rulers had a constant supply of manpower from the interior tribes like the Nika, which gave them morale to fight for their independence. The conflicts also broke out because the Oman rulers lacked a strong and effective administration at the coast. This was because they were preoccupied with enemies in Arabia. East African history. Mazrui conflicts of 1698 and 1840. When Said Said came to power, he managed to bring the coastal struggles to an end. The course of the Busedi-Mazrui conflicts. In December 1698, Fort Jesus fell in the hands of the Oman Arabs after chasing away the Portuguese. In 1728-1729, the Portuguese recaptured Mombasa, but they were driven out with the help of the Oman Arabs. In 1741, the Yoruba Sultan Saif ibn of Oman appointed Mohammed ibn Uthman of the Mazrui family to be the governor of Mombasa. He was expected to be loyal to the ruler of Oman. Shortly after this, the Yoruba ruling family was overthrown by the Busedi ruling family in Oman. The Busedi dynasty therefore became the new rulers of the Oman Empire, and a new sultan, or ruler of the Oman Empire, called Sultan Ahmad ibn Said, was installed after the murder of the Yoruba Sultan. The Mazrui governors at the coast and Mohammed ibn Uthman of Mombasa refused to recognize Sultan Ahmad ibn Said's administration. The Mazrui governors therefore declared themselves independent because to them, the Oman rulers were supposed to come from the Yoruba family and not the Busedi family. Sultan Ahmad ibn Said of Oman therefore decided to wage war against the Mazrui Arabs. In the chaos that followed, Mohammed ibn Uthman, the governor of Mombasa, was killed in cold blood, which greatly annoyed the Mazrui at the coast. Ali ibn Uthman, a brother to the murdered governor, took over power as the ruler of Mombasa, and he was determined to defend the Mazrui power at the coast against the Oman Arabs up to the bitter end. Ali ibn Uthman continued with the expansion of Mazrui influence at the coast, and by 1807, the Mazrui territory stretched from Pangani to Melindi. By this time, it was only Kilwa that was loyal to the Oman Arabs. In 1807, the Mazrui conquered Pate but failed to conquer Lomé. In 1814, the Mazrui governor tried to get support from the British. However, by the time he did this, the British had already signed an agreement with his East African history. Mazrui conflicts of 1698 and 1840. In 1817, Said Said freed Pate and ordered all her subjects not to trade with the Mazrui in Mombasa. He also ordered Zanzibar to liberate Pemba and Brava from the Mazrui rule. Said Said also attacked Pemba in 1822 and drove out the Mazrui governor, hence expanding the Busedi influence. In 1824, Said Said personally commanded the forces that bombarded Mombasa and almost brought the Mazrui self-rule to an end. Mazrui rulers finally accepted Oman rule after that defeat. However, when Said Said went back to Oman, the Mazrui governors again stopped recognizing the Oman rule. He returned in 1829, but he failed to defeat the Mazrui, who had got support from the Nika in their struggle. It was Said Said's son Khalid who captured Fort Jesus, the headquarters of the Mazrui, and threw some of Mazrui family members and the governor in the Indian Ocean. In 1837, Said Said tricked some of the Mazrui family members and took them to the Persian Gulf, where he starved them to death. This ended the long-time conflict between the Mazrui and the Busid families. The coast was once again brought under one ruler, Said said. In 1840, Said said transferred his capital from Muscat to Zanzibar to completely end power struggles at the coast. He got the support of his new fiends, the British, to strengthen his military positions so as to be able to rule the coast in Oman effectively. The results of the Busidi-Mazrui conflicts. Because of the conflicts, Mombasa declared herself independent from the Oman rule. The conflicts led to the destruction of property. For example, Fort Jesus was destroyed in 1741. Mazrui's influence was extended to most of the coastal towns. The conflicts increased the divisions among the coastal towns. For example, Zanzibar remained loyal to Oman rule, but though there was resistance to Oman rule in some towns, the coast was later placed under Oman control and there was temporary peace. East African history. Mazrui conflicts of 1698 and 1840. The conflicts led to the loss of lives. For example, in 1837 Mombasa was attacked, which left many people dead. The conflicts made Said said to transfer his capital from Muscat to Zanzibar so as to establish effective control over the East African coast. In conclusion, the results were largely negative, or were political, social and economic, or were long-term and short-term. The reign of Sultan Ibn Said said 1840–1856, ruler of Oman and Zanzibar. Said said was born in 1791 in Muscat, which was the capital city of Oman. He was born to Sultan Ibn Said Ahmed of the Busidi family. His father died in 1804 and left the entire empire in the hands of his two sons. Because of their tender age, Said said was 13 years old, and therefore power was entrusted to their cousin, who was called Badir Ibn Saif. In 1806, at the age of 15 years, Said said felt he was old enough to rule Oman, and he decided to kill his cousin. The murder was motivated by the rumor that their cousin was planning to kill them, Said said, and his brother. While in power, Said said faced a number of problems like opposition from his family members, conflicts between the tribes in Oman, sea pirates, and conflicts between the Busid and Mazrui families. In 1840, he transferred his capital from Muscat to Zanzibar. Unfortunately, Said said died in 1856, having done much for the coast and East Africa as a whole. While Sultan Ibn Said said transferred his capital from Muscat to Zanzibar, Said said wanted to be close to Mombasa because of its rebellious nature. Said said had greatly admired the cool coastal climate. The fertile soils also attracted Said said because they could support cloves growing. Zanzibar had good natural harbours which would allow big ships to land easily. He wanted to control the lucrative Indian Ocean trade rather than leaving it to his relatives, who were corrupt and unreliable. The East African coastal people were considered to be more loyal to Said said than the East African history. Mazrui conflicts of 1698 and 1840. Said said also wanted to establish regular trade links between the East African coast and the interior of East Africa. Said said also wanted to exploit the cheap slave labour at the coast to use on his clove plantation. Said said also wanted to gain popularity and prestige as a ruler of two territories at the same time. Zanzibar also had a security advantage since it was an island and it would offer maximum protection naturally compared to Oman. Said said wanted to end the Busidi-Mazrui conflicts once and for all. Zanzibar was strategically located as a market for goods, and this would enable him to control and expand the interior trade. Said said also had the belief that the waters of Zanzibar were sweeter than those of Oman, and this forced him to shift his capital from Muscat to Zanzibar. He also wanted to check on the activities of the Indian Ocean sea pirates. Religious persecutions in Oman forced him to shift his capital to Zanzibar. Effects or changes introduced by Said said in Zanzibar. Said said developed the clove industry in Zanzibar, and today Zanzibar is the leading producer of cloves. He signed commercial treaties with European countries, for example Britain in 1839, France 1844, Hungary 1844, Germany and US, which attracted many foreign traders at the coast. He transformed Zanzibar into an intraport. It became an international market for traders from all parts of the world. Encouraged trade with interior tribes of East Africa, e.g. Yao, Naimazi and Sukuma, who always supplied slaves. He fought sea pirates with the help of the British Navy, which brought about peace and increased trade on the Indian Ocean. He organized personal caravans into the interior of Africa to bring goods to Zanzibar, hence encouraging the development of long-distance trade. He invited the Indian Banyans to settle along the coast, who advanced loans to the Zanzibaris. East African history. Mazrui conflicts of 1698 and 1840. Encouraged Europeans to open up trading posts in Zanzibar to increase trading activities, e.g. In 1844 the Germans opened up one. Managed to end the quarrels that existed along the coast between the Busidi and Mazrui. They attracted foreigners to Zanzibar, for example Arabs, Indians, Europeans, and this created a population of mixed culture. Said was also involved in the signing of treaties to end slave trade and slavery in East Africa. For example, in 1822 and 1845 he signed treaties with the British. Socially, Said encouraged the spread of Islam and built many Quranic schools. He also encouraged the spread of the Swahili culture along the coast and the interior of